Okay, so this is a series of short talks around ownership and what that means currently today, and some of the things to consider, particularly if you're making creative pieces of work or engaging with the creative industries. So there's a series of sort of clips that will go through on the slides. I'm not too worried about the video playback. What's more important is the sound, because I illustrate examples of the things you want to talk about. So I'm going to play some examples and talk generally about them and how ownership plays a role in this. And we're going to touch on a little bit around copyright and patent law and look at some of the alternative options that we have. So let's get started with a song to begin with. So here is this song, and I'm sure you will recognize it as it plays. Not the clearest of recordings. This is off archive.org. Okay, so you probably know it much more with these lyrics applied.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, so the original version, Good Morning to You, dates back to the mid-19th century and was written by two sisters, Patty and Mildred Hill. And what happened was that it was originally used as a song at the beginning of school. So in America, it would be sung at the start of a school day. But some impromptu sort of parties, the words were adjusted and became the song known as Happy Birthday to You. It's understood this is now probably the most recognizable song in the English language. So a pretty big song written by two sisters in the mid-19th century. Up until very recently, each year Warner Chappell made over $2 million from the rights of Happy Birthday alone. So just from owning the rights to the song Happy Birthday, they were making $2 million a year. So the original version, the publishers owned it supposedly, and in 1988 Warner Chappell bought those publishers, and they claim copyright for every use of it in any film, radio, or in fact anywhere open to the public. So anytime we heard the song, be that on any program, a fee would have been paid to and collected by Warner Chappell, which is how they are enabling themselves to make $2 million just on the ownership of one single song, originally written by two ladies. In fact, anywhere this song was performed in public, where there is a substantial number of people in attendance, not family or friends, then the rights would need to be paid for to Warner Chappell. So if you went out for a meal in a restaurant, and in the attendance in that restaurant there were more people in there than were considered friends or family, then some money needs to be paid to Warner Chappell, and lots of restaurants and whatever have to pay the Performing Rights Society, which I think has actually been renamed, but a fee, an annual fee, to ensure they can play music, be that on the speakers or in fact have music performed in their spaces. In February of 2016, Warner Chappell actually agreed to pay a settlement of $14 million to those who had licensed the song, as it was declared that the song should have been in the public domain. And in fact, it turns out that Warner Chappell may have known that they didn't actually ever own the rights to it, but they hid substantial documents to ensure they continued to own the rights to this song. It has been now declared as being in the public domain, and that was done in the middle of 2016. And there was a short documentary which was 4 years in the making about the song Happy Birthday, and a campaign by this lady called Jen Nelson to liberate this song and to actually get it into the public domain. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk through some examples of where creative works should have entered into the public domain, but for various reasons haven't, and what has changed. So we're going to play a little clip here from a film that I'm going to reference a number of times that you can definitely check out, which is a film called RIP, a Remix Manifesto. So here is a clip from that film, and this is actually a clip inside the film from a talk by Lawrence Lessig, and again there's links to that talk, which is his final talk, and so he's actually a lawyer and one of the people behind something called Creative Commons, which we'll come to at the end of these series of talks.
He's a mashup artist. Steamboat Willie was based on Steamboat Bill, and in his notes on the score, he says basically he instructs his staff, go and rip off Steamboat Bill for me, please.
Steamboat Bill, steaming down the Mississippi.
Use that so that people will know that we're referencing Steamboat Bill here. Mickey was meant to be a stand-in for every person, to be a kind of generic, everyman. And so I think that we were told to identify with Mickey. And when you're told to identify with Mickey, you sometimes do.
Okay, so that is Cory Doctorow there talking about the fact that Mickey Mouse and Disney, in fact, took classic tales and repackaged them for a new generation. So the stories and those kind of things were repackaged by Disney and reused. And so Cory Doctorow there talks specifically about the Mickey Mouse. And in fact, when we look at Mickey Mouse, something super interesting here is that there is in 1998 there was an act in the United States which is often referred to as the Mickey Mouse Act or the Sonny Bono Act, which was where the Walt Disney Company lobbied extensively to ensure that certain things were delayed from entering into the public domain. So in fact, Mickey Mouse cannot enter into the public domain. So you can't use or remix or reinterpret Mickey Mouse without getting permission from the Disney Corporation. And what we see is that the Disney Corporation, have lobbied pretty hard to extend copyright. But if we take another look at Disney and look at what he was doing, this clip here shows that what Disney was doing was trying to produce cultural artifacts.
I'm a big fan of this man, Walt Disney. I'm a big fan of his work because his greatest works demonstrate beautifully how culture builds on the past. What Walt Disney did, better than perhaps anybody else, was to take works that were in the public domain and updated it and made it relevant for our age.
Sleigh. You boys.
His work was always continuing the conversation of a culture. It was an expression through a remix of the stuff that went before.
Okay, so what Walt Disney did was originally he took classic tales and repackaged them for a new generation. And that was effectively taking those pieces of culture and remixing them because they had either fallen out of copyright or they were, in the public domain, and made new works of art. And some of the stories, The Little Mermaid, for example, lots of people, the first time they would come across this story, which is less gruesome than the original, would be through a Disney version, a Disney remake of those. But after Walt Disney's death, the Disney Corporation ensured that the same wouldn't be able to happen to their works of art. And there's been cases where they have pursued individuals, schools for, creating murals of Disney characters without seeking permission. And in fact, what we see, particularly, with regards to the Sonny Bono Act in 1988, is that Disney have been one of the corporations who have ensured that copyright and ownership of artifacts has extended and extended. What's super interesting now is that, in fact, American culture is owned by about 6 companies in total, and these companies are all looked after by the Motion Picture Association of America and the Recording Industry of Artists Association of America. So there's an issue here in terms of who controls these cultural artifacts through the ownership, and that ownership generates revenue, and that revenue is through ownership. And that talk we saw there was Lawrence Lessig's talk on his final talk actually on free culture, and he has instigated a number of books that is worth looking at around what it means to remix and some of the issues around copyright.